The officer saluted. "Countess, please forgive this intrusion, but I have come." "Major Klug," the Countess said, advancing toward him and proffering her hand. "How good to see you again. I know why you've come. I think perhaps we should talk privately, don't you? But first, perhaps, your soldiers, their rifles, they're frightening the children." The Major hesitated. He seemed at a loss for a moment as to how to deal with the situation, but he recovered quickly enough. "Very well, Countess, if you insist." He ordered the soldiers to lower their weapons, told us all to stay right where we were, then followed the Countess into her study. I do not know how long we stood there in the hallway, waiting, but it seemed like a lifetime. No one spoke. All the while I held Peter's hand, knowing these might be the last moments we would have together. Carly kept looking up at Muddy, his eyes filled with tears, but Muddy did not notice. Like all of us, she was straining to listen, to make some sense out of the murmur of voices we could all hear on the other side of the door. Stop and think at this point. What do you think? How do you think Lizzie might be feeling right now? Why might you think that? When at last the door opened, the Major came out on his own. Without a glance at any of us, without a word, he strode swiftly across the hall toward the front door. He waited for a moment for a bewildered Hans to open it for him, and then left, his soldiers following him. The Countess came out moments later, a glass in her hand. She was breathing quite heavily. "I am afraid I had to have a little drink," she said, to stop myself shaking. She smiled at us then. "Do not look so worried. Actually, I think it all went quite well, better than I could have hoped for. It was lucky for us that it was Major Klug who came. He served with my husband in the same regiment. They knew each other quite well. Anyway, it's all over now. In the sense in which we need him to be, he is, I am sure, an honorable man. He will keep his word. You are safe to go." "What do you mean?" Muddy asked her. "What did he say? What did you tell him?" "You have heard of the stick and the carrot," the Countess went on. "When you want to persuade someone to do something they do not wish to do, you need both, don't you? Stick and carrot. First, I used the stick. I reminded him that the Americans may be no more than a week or two away, that if anything happened to any of you, I personally would see to it that when they come, the Americans would know Major Klug was responsible, and that I would make sure, quite sure he was shot. As for the carrot, I keep some money in my safe, not much, but it helped. And just to be sure, I read him a few words from my husband's last letter from prison before they executed him. Major Klug had great respect for my husband. My husband wrote, and I know the words by heart, 'It makes me happy to know that out of the ashes of this horror a new Germany must grow, and that you and our friends and family will be part of it. Remember always the words that I love. Whatever you can do, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic. Begin it now. So begin the new Germany, my darling. Help it grow. I know you will. I'm sad I will not be there to see it in person, but I shall always be with you in spirit.'" Major Klug seemed to take this very much to heart, as I hoped he would. When the time came to leave later that same night, the Countess kissed Carly and told him to behave himself. And then we were walking away from the house. By the time I turned to look, she had gone inside. Following along behind us were the choir school children, in pairs, a sack on every back, and as silent as we were, Muddy walking with them. Peter went on ahead, our pathfinder as usual, while I led Marlene with Carly riding up on her, all of us knowing we owed our lives to that extraordinary and wonderful lady.